Welcome back for another North Carolina Final Exam review video. Today we're going to be looking at the Civil War, which occurred between 1861 and 1865. The United States was in turmoil after the election of 1860, and South Carolina had seceded from the Union. As you watch the video, make sure that you answer the guided questions provided. You may need to pause or rewatch the video in order to answer the guided questions. When the video ends, summarize in paragraph form the main points of the video using the specific vocabulary given to you on the WSQ. These words will show up as bolded and underlined words during the video. Finish by asking one question. This could be a confusion question, a general question about the topics, or a discussion question for the class. The essential questions that we're going to be answering in this video are: what advantages and disadvantages did the North and the South have going into the Civil War, and then what battles were turning points during the Civil War? The Southern states had the advantage of it being a defensive war. They knew the territory that they were fighting in. The cash crop of cotton could be used potentially to convince foreign allies, such as the British, to join them. They also had the most experienced military commanders. The disadvantages was that they had a smaller population than the North. They also didn't have a lot of industry, and it would be hard for them to provide the needed war materials for their soldiers. The Northern states had the advantage of having an extensive railroad network. The Transcontinental Railroad was in the process of being built. They also had a strong industry that would be able to support their wartime efforts. They had a much stronger navy than the South as well, and a larger population. They also had an abundant food supply. The disadvantages that the North experienced was that they didn't have quite as many experienced leaders as the Southern states did. They also had a divided population, meaning that not everybody in the North supported going to war with the Southern states. Some slave states chose to remain loyal to the Union and became known as border states because they created a border between the Union and the Confederacy. These states created a buffer between the Southern states and the Northern Union states. These states were important because they held the most agricultural and industrial resources that the Union needed. The border states were Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, Delaware, and Maryland. The first shots of the Civil War were fired on Fort Sumter in the Bay of Charleston, South Carolina. This event started the Civil War. One of the first battles of the Civil War was the Battle of Bull Run. At Manassas, Virginia, the Union troops entered into the first official battle. The Union troops and the Confederate troops struggled for days, with no one winning. The Battle of Bull Run ended the Union's hopes for a short war, noting that the Confederacy was able to hold their own and battle. The Union victory at the Battle of Antietam persuaded England and France to remain neutral in the American conflict. The English and the French had possibly been allies for the Southern states. It also enabled Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation that would free slaves in states of rebellion, or the Southern states. This was important because if those slaves were able to reach Union outposts or a Union camp during the war, they would then be considered free. The Battle of Gettysburg was won by the Union. During this battle, Confederate General Lee wanted to take his chances by invading the northern states of Gettysburg, Virginia. The Union was able to push the Confederates back in retreat. The Confederates would never attempt to invade the North again. Union General Sherman marched towards Atlanta. Atlanta was a major Southern industrial and manufacturing center. Sherman laid total war, or he destroyed all civilian and military resources that could potentially be used against the Union in battle. He marched from Atlanta up the East Coast, leaving a trail of destruction in his path. The Union forces were able to surround the Confederates at the town of Appomattox, Virginia, forcing them to surrender. General Grant presented the terms of surrender that Lee's troops would turn over their weapons and go home. The surrender at Appomattox Courthouse ended the Civil War. However, it was not the last surrender, and there was two other surrenders that occurred, both in Durham, North Carolina, at the Bennett Place, and also in Texas. Congress chartered two corporations during the Civil War, the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroad, to build the transcontinental railroad that would connect the East Coast with the West Coast. Also during the Civil War, Lincoln had suspended the right of habeas corpus. This gave Americans the right to a trial before being thrown into jail. He suspended the right of habeas corpus in order to protect the Union against Confederate spies. Make sure that you answer the guided questions. If you missed one, watch the video again, pausing where you need to. If you feel like you have a good understanding of the video, summarize it in paragraph form using the main points from the video. Make sure that you use the specific vocabulary that appear as bolded and underlined words on your WSQ sheet. Then finish by asking one question. This can be something that you're still confused about, a general question, or a discussion question for the class. Thank you for joining me for yet again another North Carolina Final Exam video. We'll see you next time.